It's time now for Explain and Verify with Samkele. Parliament voted to adopt the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals following a debate in the National Assembly on Wednesday. Now today, let's break down the numbers for you. Samkele, walk us through yesterday's proceedings at the National Assembly. Who's representing us?
While Bongiwe, 18 parties in the National Assembly, 50+1 majority was needed. A total voted within that aspect of 376 that were present in the National Assembly. Bongiwe, going to our very first slide, Bongiwe, it goes into context. For instance, this vote in Parliament this time around, there were 18 parties represented in the National Assembly. 50+1 majority was needed. But that 50+1 did not necessitate that they be all 400 members of Parliament present. It was a simple majority of those present in the National Assembly. So thus, there were 376 members of Parliament that were present in the National Assembly at the time. One from the Patriotic Alliance was late, came in late after the doors were closed. The NCC as well was closed out because they also came in late. 10 members of the National Assembly of the MK Party were not present. 3 of the African National Congress were not present. And some other parties had 1 or 2 that were not present in the National Assembly. Thus, there was only 376 at the time of voting present in the chambers.
And when you look at the numbers, Samkele, about 194 for and 182 against. This is a seriously tight race, wasn't it?
It was a seriously tight race. For instance, if you look at the numbers, I saw one of the AFF members of Parliament, Mazwi says, tweeting that if all 10 members of the MK Party were present in the National Assembly, going to our very next slide, which will show the numbers of people who voted. For instance, there were 194 who voted yes. That was 51.59% that voted yes. Then there was 182 who voted no, 48.40%. But if you were to add the 10 of the MK Party and the NCC and the other parties that were not present, members of Parliament, that could have easily tilted the numbers to be in favor of those who voted no against this particular voting of the budget of the country. But in this instance, those who were not present ultimately catapulted the vote to be 194 for those who were in favor of this fiscal budget that was presented by the Minister of Finance, Inokotogan, and ultimately debated by the Financial Committee. But interestingly, there were no abstentions. There was no one in the National Assembly who did not vote. Everybody voted, unless if you were ultimately locked out and arrived late to be inside the chambers, Bungiwa.
And Samkele, let's speak about these smaller parties, right? Because they seem to be willing to work with the African National Congress. Do we know what's in it for them?
It's not yet clear what's in it for them, but we do know that the ANC will be holding its own special National Executive Committee meeting on Monday. The president of the ANC, speaking to the caucus alongside the deputy president of the African National Congress, were very clear that the DA has defined itself outside of the government of national unity. For instance, you've got an Action SA, which has been lauded by the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, and also the chief whip of the African National Congress, Mdumiseni Ntuli, saying that Action SA was more reasonable to negotiate with than the Democratic Alliance. The IFP as well has voted in favor of this particular budget. One wonders what will happen there with the IFP and the ANC. For instance, if you look at a province like KwaZulu-Natal, that provincial legislature and that government is dependent on the DA being part of the government of provincial unity. So one wonders, as the DA negotiates and debates in its FedEx in that battle between Helen Zille, the federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance, and John Steenhuisen, one wonders, out of these two warring factions within the DA, which one will ultimately win. But seeing Helen Zille there in court, challenging this particular passing of this budget, one tells you that the Helen Zille faction seems to be on top within the Democratic Alliance. But the smaller parties, major parties, voted against this particular budget. That was the DA, the MKP, the EFF. The DA very much upset with its coalition partner within the government of national unity, that is the ANC, because they don't see the UDM, the IFP, and all of the other parties that are part of the government of national unity, the PAC, they just see them as a fruit salad, as an add-on onto the meal, but they see that the main course is between themselves and the African National Congress. Hence, Helen Zille, when she spoke at the doorstep of that particular high court within the Western Cape, she spoke of a coalition of the DA and the ANC, and how the ANC would fail to hold together conglomerate of political parties in that particular coalition of more than 10 or so if the DA were to walk out. Voted in favor, smaller parties, that would be the IFP, the PAC, Action SA, PA, UDM, Rise Mzansi, Bossa, Al Jama, Good Party. But interestingly, Action SA, Herman Mashaba, in an interview, the leader of Action SA, said that if called upon to be a minister, he would not refuse. He would accept that particular call up by the president, which would ultimately mean that Action SA would need to change members of parliament. One would need to resign for Herman Mashaba to go in and for him to go into the government of national unity. At this point in time, they're not part of the GNU, but should their nemesis, the Democratic Alliance, exit, Herman Mashaba is literally at the doorstep knocking. But interestingly, as a visual I posted on social media of Gwede Mantashe, Marshall Dlamini, Julius Malema, Tumseni Ntuli, Deputy President Paul Mashatile. Do you know what the conversation was around that point?
What was the conversation? Because I was going to go there because that was very interesting. What was happening there, Samkele?
The conversation there was Julius Malema saying, kick out the DA before voting. We as the EFF are willing to vote for you, but the condition is you kick out the DA, we vote with you, then we renegotiate this particular government of national unity, because the EFF essentially has one foot within the Progressive Caucus and one foot with negotiating with the ANC, but their condition still stems back to when it was started after the election, to say that we can't form part of a government that has Freedom Front Plus, that has the Democratic Alliance. We can't be in that government. But in this instance, the Freedom Front Plus voted against this particular motion. The Democratic Alliance voted against the government of national unity. So it's not only the DA that is not happy with the ANC, particularly with the Bella Act, the NHI, and also the Expropriation Act. It is also these other political formations. It is just that the IFP was able to go further and have its dissatisfaction with the Expropriation Act, but still vote with the ANC on this particular budget. But interestingly, Enoch Kotongane, the Minister of Finance, very clear with the Deputy President of the ANC, Paul Mashatile, with Nomvula Mokonyane, the Deputy Secretary General, and the SG, Fikile Mbalula, in saying that you can't preside over a budget you did not vote for. Herman Mashaba also tweeted that this afternoon,
saying draw a line in the sand. That's Minister Enoch Kotongane there. Samkele, it seems as things stand, South Africans will start seeing the difference the 0.5 percentage point VAT increase will bring to their purchases from the 1st of May. We'll leave it there for today's edition of Explain and Verify.